what does gutsy mean to you, my friend?
Gutsy, I love that word. I really do. Because I think, especially for women, we are such magnificent creatures. And I think when women own gutsiness and we realize that we are strong, I think that's when everything changes. And so to me, gutsy is just a reminder. And to me, I interpret it as this call to be bold, to be chest up, shoulders back, head high, charging into the male dominated world, understanding that we are capable, that we are strong and we are bold while also having the ability to be soft and intentional and intellectual. And so I am always going to be a cheerleader of women because I have this like sorry men, I have this bias that we are just such phenomenal creatures who can truly accomplish anything. So to me, gutsy is just owning that and being bold and realizing that like we can do anything.
Welcome to the Gutsy Podcast, the show where you learn how to own what you actually want and shift the mind junk that's been holding you back. I'm LauraAura, keynote speaker, coach, and your guide to help you get clarity, build confidence, and make the gutsy moves that change your life. Each week, I'm going to help you simplify things by teaching you how to get out of your head while stepping into action. This way you can achieve all those life shifts that you've been overthinking. Your desire, that drives you. But gutsy, that's what gets it done. Time management, something we all need, but almost no one was ever taught. Most of us don't struggle because we're lazy or undisciplined. We struggle because we're treating time like a vague concept instead of the finite resource that it actually is. Today, I'm joined by Samantha Lane, founder of Origami Day, for a powerful conversation about how to stop feeling behind and start managing your time in a way that actually works. We talk about the mindset shifts that change everything and the habits that keep people stuck in last-minute chaos, plus a simple, sustainable framework for prioritizing, planning, and protecting your time, all without that extra rigidity or overwhelm. If you are tired of feeling frazzled and you're ready for more clarity, ease, and control, especially with your time, this conversation is for you. If you've ever ended the week wondering, where on earth did my time go? Then Samantha is here to help. After years of struggling with complicated time management strategies and never-ending to-do list, something I know we can all relate to, Samantha Lane created her own planning tools and a simple framework that changed her life. Her unique approach to time management has since revolutionized companies across the US and even become a must-view TEDx talk. Today, she's going to save you some time by sharing the most important lessons from her decade of obsessing over time management and finding what really works. The best part about this conversation is it's not fancy. Okay, it's not complex. There's not a lot of bells and whistles. There's not a lot of things you have to do. It's really about shifting the way that you think about time and the way that you prioritize it. So let's get into it. Hello, Samantha. Welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Of course, listen, time management, I it's always on everyone's mind. How do
Mhm.
we have more of it? How do we do it? How do we figure it out? Like it's just an ongoing thing. So I'm kind of curious, what has been your experience with time management? Like, was there a situation that led to you doing this work, or like give me the backstory?
Yeah, so I have historically not been great at time management. So I grew up, I went to school, I got into the workforce, and I just thought, you got to work your life away. That's how you get to success. You work, work, work. And so I found myself sort of in a position as a workaholic, but I was like the worst kind of workaholic because I would show up on two wheels 5 minutes after a meeting started, unprepared and hungry, and probably wearing my shirt backwards. And so I could get things done, but it was in a very like frazzly sort of way. And this was my life for a long time. And I put off the things that mattered to me and I focused just on this climbing this ladder. And then when I was 29 years old, I had to have my chest cut open and went into this surgery. And they said, you should be good to go in 4 weeks. But unfortunately, I was not good to go in 4 weeks. And I had a series of complications. And it took me well over a year to really get back to quote unquote normal. Um, and that really just changed my life. It changed my perspective. I remember sitting in the hospital thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to die? I'm too young. I've done it wrong. And it just instantly changed my view of time. And then as I went through that recovery, it was like more and more justification for me to change it. And it was almost like someone had pulled back this curtain and I saw something and then I could never unsee it. And I've never been the same person. And so from that moment on, really, I started learning and I realized time management is not something we're born with necessarily. Maybe some people have a more natural inclination to it or their formative years give them a little more understanding. But for a lot of us, it's a skill and it's not a skill we're getting in class. It's not a skill we're getting in school. So I just sort of went on this whole journey and learned time management. And then I realized it was so critical. So then I felt like it was too great of a secret not to share.
Wow. I mean, nothing like a life altering, scary moment like that to just put everything in
Mhm.
perspective. I mean,
Mm.
that's eye opening in every way possible. And also, I'm certain that none of us want to be in a position where it's gotten that far. Not saying that you put yourself in that position, but like, do you know what I mean? Like we don't want to wait
Yeah.
until something happens to then make a shift.
Well, but a lot of us do because it's just so easy. You
Yeah.
know, we've unfortunately, and I won't stay on this soapbox for too long, but I think our culture is one that's created this ease of non-valuing time and this glorification of busy versus intentional, not being as present in our moments. And then if you get into sort of like what technology has done over the years, we really kind of all live on this surface level speed of movement, connectivity. And I just think that it's hard to go against that. You have to want it. And so for me, that was not the first time I'd had awakenings about time. It was just the first time it was so strong that I listened. I'm sure you've had an opportunity or a moment where you're driving and you slam on your brakes to avoid a car accident, or you find out that someone passed away but they're so young. How could that have happened? We all have these opportunities to realize that time is precious. We just don't always take the opportunity or see it for what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something in your story that I think is incredibly relatable, and that was I could get things done, so I did. And I think that
Hmm.
that's so relatable because and I can speak from personal experience here. There's just something about like always being able to come through for yourself in the 11th hour, or you
Hmm.
get in this kind of cram session, or like it almost forms a habit. I have found for me it's a habit, and it's something that I was used to growing up as well, so that's come into my adult life. What are your thoughts on like breaking habits, or like knowing that you can get it all done in the 11th hour and just being used to that and undoing that process?
Oh gosh, I love that thought. So when I went on this journey of time management, I started by learning about just the basics of time management. But in this process, what I learned was also a lot about human behavior. Because for anyone to make a change, like I needed a change, I needed a seismic lifestyle change. So I couldn't just buy a new planner. Believe me, that's where I started. Scoured the aisles of Target every day looking for like the magic bullet. And I realized it did not exist because part of time management is not just the tools. So this sort of came into this realization that I had of what I would call a success or performance formula. And there's two parts of it. There's mindset plus habits. And those combined will directly contribute to your success. And if you think about every successful business owner, athlete, anyone you know in your life that you're like, man, they're crushing it. They probably are thriving in both sides of that equation. They're mentally grounded, resilient, clear, and they have healthy habits versus unhealthy habits. So, really, what I think is important for us to keep in mind is we may be stronger on one side of that formula or weaker on one side. We need both. So, I had some decent habits, but I also had some detrimental habits. So for me to be able to change those habits, I needed to start with my perspective shift and utilizing something like cognitive reframing to change the way I looked at my work, in order to start building new habits. if that makes sense and answers your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. I'd love to take that even one step further. Can you give us an example of what that looked like? What did that sound like so we can kind of see or hear it in context?
Yes. So one of the unhealthy habits that I had was never saying no to anything and feeling like I couldn't say no. And so my habit, my default was always to say yes. And so it was more, more, more. Well, what I realized was in order to change that habit, I needed to address the mindset behind it. So I started utilizing cognitive reframing, which is a psychological tactic to change the way you're viewing something. So a simple example is like you're driving down the road and someone starts just, they fly up on your rear end and they're honking and they're zooming around. And past me, pre-surgery me would have been like, oh, what a jerk, and all the expletives. And it would have changed my energy. Um, like post surgery me, current me, I now simply understand that I don't know what that person's going through. For all I know, they've got a sick kid they're rushing to the hospital. Their loved one is on their deathbed. They may just have to go to the bathroom very badly. Like, I don't know what's going on with them. So I just say they want it more. And I just move out of the way and it never bothers me again. But nothing in the external has changed. The only thing that has changed is the way I took in the information. And so that was one of the most helpful tools that I learned to get my mindset around the reality that if I say yes to everything, since time is a finite unit, then I am actually saying no to other things without realizing it. So I had to really call that for what it is and say, saying yes to something is saying no to something else because we only have 24 hours in each day. Sure, time is an infinite concept, but in our lives, it's limited. We don't know how many days or breaths we get. So to be more critical of that, to value my time at a higher level, that reframing helped me to then develop a habit of being able to default to saying no to certain things or saying no more frequently, or at least not saying yes to everything without thinking through it. So that's
Yes.
a simple example of like utilizing both parts of that. I had to get my mind around why it was okay to say no, to then develop habits of being able to say no. And what was great though is that that process showed me, hey, this is good. I said no, the world didn't fall apart and things were fine. So that success created more success. And then I was able to perpetuate both the mindset and the habit of that reality, which was sometimes we have to say no.
Yes. Listen, I tell people all the time, it only takes a time or two for you to feel good to realize I want to
Mhm.
do this more. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
totally.
I've been doing this a different way this whole time and I can feel good. Like I can feel less stress, I can feel more on top of things, I can feel more in control because I made that one little switch. Okay, I'll have more of that, please. And thank you. Like it really does not take that many times for it to start clicking.
I agree. And especially if you're open to just reality. Like another thing for me was just like, stop lying to yourself, Samantha. Like I would often hit the snooze button. I'd set my alarm for one of my good friends went to the gym at 6 o'clock every morning. And so I would set my alarm like I'm gonna go to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I would hit snooze until like 7:45. And then I would fly out of bed to get myself where I was going on time. Then I eventually was just like, hey girl, guess what? You're not someone who works out at 6 a.m. So like
Yep.
let's call it what it is. Let's change the alarm and you wake up at the latest point you can wake up to be on time. And just that simple like truth to myself was huge because then my day did not start with this frazzled behind cadence. My day was one where I was on my own terms and on my own time. And I think that was another huge change for me during my recovery was realizing that like just understanding who we are and owning ourselves and our time is so, so life changing. And being more realistic about what we can accomplish in a day, being more realistic about that value. I went from feeling behind all the time to feeling more empowered all the time. And that shift, in fact, made me more successful and more productive, which is wild.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's exactly where I want to go with this. So you were talking earlier about how you started by learning the basics of time management.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've all received that fantastic handbook that you speak of. Could you walk us through like maybe even just understanding the basics of time management or what it is so that we can start to achieve exactly what you were just talking about, which is feeling like on top of things and sometimes dare I say even ahead, like having some
Mhm.
white space.
Well, yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, man, there's so much. Just, I think it's important for you to know that I could talk about time management for nonstop motor mouth speed for a month before I run out of anything to say.
Amazing.
Just So let me try to dial it into the most important stuff. Let's put it in the context of that formula, mindset plus habits. So let's start with that. Time is finite. We need that mental shift. I've said this already. I'll say it again because it's one of the most important things we can realize. We've got to stop thinking about time as this infinite, intangible concept. We have to start thinking about time as a finite, defined measuring unit. So a lot of where we all get in trouble is we say things like, I'll do it later, or someday, or eventually. That's not time. That's a concept. That's an idea. What we could instead say is 4 o'clock, Thursday. This will take me 10 minutes. We've got to define it like the same way we would define a cup of flour. That's the probably ground zero, most basic time management concept is time is not an idea, it's a measuring unit. Now, I will go ahead and asterisk here because there's a lot of people who say, well, time is elastic. You can change how long 1 minute feels. Well, of course, we can experience time differently. And that really comes into like, if you try to be silent for a minute straight, that's the fastest way to realize like time can feel different versus if you talk to someone for a minute straight, those are two very different experiences. But the minute is the same. If we start the clock and end the clock, it's the same. So that's sort of like first and most foundational piece. Time is a measuring unit. Beyond that, then we can go into our habits. And this is where I've developed a simple framework. When I read everything and learned everything I could, I dialed it in to say, okay, there's 3 pillars of time management. We have prioritizing. You've got to know what's important, what's worth your time. We've got planning, the beautiful art of defining how we will use that time, and then protecting. How do we then protect our plans and our ability to show up and execute them? So, to encapsulate what I just said, mindset, time is a measuring unit. It's not a concept. Habits, prioritize, plan, protect. And there's definitely a lot of depth in those 3 Ps, but that is really the basics of time management.
Yeah, and maybe we can dig into the 3 Ps here in just a bit because I think that I know that there's a lot of goodness in each one of those, but I really love the visual that
Mhm.
you gave us about like let's measure it like we do flour.
Yeah.
Because you're so right when we're like, I'll get to it later, I'll get to it tomorrow, someday.
Hmm.
It's a moving post. And those things just never happen. And then things stack up. And then we feel bad about ourselves because we're not accomplishing the things that we want to do. And then we get more behind. I mean, it's this snowball effect, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's also, it's like, it's kind of akin to money. It's like if you just walk around and you're like, okay, we're going to hire you for this job. Okay, cool. How much money will I make? Some. And then and how what will it cost me to live? A bit. Like, those aren't real. Like, those aren't real. You can't work with that. We've got to take, and perhaps that's what's made my style of time management so different is I'm really hung up on the details. It's, it's, it's much more that, the details. It's forget how pretty the planner looks. That's great for someone else, but that's not to me when I went out into the world to try to find this magic bullet after my surgery. The number of like planners that overwhelmed the hell out of me was insane. Like I was like, this is pretty. And then I pick it up and then I'm like, it's like, here's today's verse, here's today's song. Write down 3 things that you want to accomplish today. Write down 7 things that you're grateful for. Check off every time you take a sip of water. And I was like, listen, I'm trying to figure out if my shirt is on the right way. I can't handle more. I cannot. So like part of part of what's really it becomes overwhelming when we're already in this place where we need time management because we're like, I can't get everything done. Like sort of what you said when we first started our conversation. It's like we all need it because we feel like we've got a million things on us every day. And then the idea of then seeking out a solution that is more, well, that's just paralyzing. So really at the root of it, it's let's take it down to the most basic form. Time is like a dollar. It's like a penny. And then let's not add more. Let's start with what we know. We've got 24 hours in a day. We've got 168 hours in a week. It's kind of like math. It's not rocket science. It takes me 30 minutes to drive to work every day. Let's stop thinking, oh, I got to drive to work. What time do I have to leave? Well, if you have to be at work at 8 a.m. and it takes you 30 minutes to drive to work, you need to leave by 7:30. Not rocket science. We make that decision one time and then we move forward with less stress. And it's that kind of simple stuff that I was nowhere near doing. But if people can just, how many of us think, oh, I've got to leave. I've got to go to work, or like I've got to be at this thing, and we don't think about it in that measuring unit. We're like, oh, I just leave a little bit of extra time. Well, how much? And that's where we start. For me, at least, that's where I was setting myself up for failure over and over and over again, instead of literally plotting out my time and treating it the same way I would treat a budget.
When you are growing or pivoting in a business, somehow you have all the time in the world, yet no time at all, and it's all happening at the same time. One of the reasons is you inherit a lot of roles and responsibilities until you're able to delegate them. But the thing I see more often than not is business owners that end up doing all kinds of things to fill the time to feel productive. I mean, if I'm busy, I'm succeeding, right? Look, this is one of the foundational things that we focus on and we shift inside of Auraline. It's a mastermind for women in business that are growing or pivoting their business, and they're tired of doing all of the shit and not getting to the place they know they belong. The women that join are saying things like, help me focus and I'll get it done. I get caught up in my head and I don't know where to go next. I'm looking for someone to help me process through stuff so I don't get stuck. We shift away from the busy work and start doing the work that actually matters. And that version of business success that you've been craving, it becomes your new normal. If you've been nodding along and you are ready to finally get your life and your business in the place that you can see and feel with every ounce of your body, then go to LauraAura.com/mastermind to enroll in Auraline today. I like these examples because at first, like I could feel there could be some resistance around like I don't want to plan every minute of my day, right? Like I don't want to like that feels too rigid, that feels too structured. But the way that you're shifting this is we're not planning every second of every day. We're just being incredibly mindful about how long things take and mapping it out and measuring it. Am I understanding you right?
And I think what's important too is time management is a spectrum. I believe life is full of spectrums. There's rarely a hard truth, even though I'm sitting here saying like time is a hard truth. That's a hard truth.
Yes.
How we interpret time management is sort of the spectrum. On one end, you have the most rigid planners, and that's your comfort zone. And then on the other hand, you have people who are like, don't tell me what to do. So like where you specifically are, you're still on a time management spectrum. You still have to manage your time in some way. Just figure out where you feel comfortable and what that depth of detail is for you. But anywhere on that spectrum, the facts are the facts are the facts. Time is a measuring unit. So, so you don't have to plan your days out for each minute, but it's still important for you to understand that if it takes you 30 minutes minimum to get to work, that's not going to change. So let's accept the reality. Like I mentioned with the snooze button, like let's just accept the reality. So much of time management is we've got to stop lying to ourselves. We've got to stop living in this world of unclear. It's really what I'm preaching is like clear it up. Let's look at what's actual facts, what's real. And let's at least deal with what's real and unchangeable. And that was, I think, the biggest shift for me was like time management wasn't defined because I didn't have it in grade school, because there isn't really a credential or a certification you can get in time management, because in our society, time management has become this very, intangible concept. So, so I think really what the main takeaway, I guess, is that it doesn't have to be. Like that's where we're all failing is we're thinking about time as some sort of like vague concept that isn't for us, when in reality, time is just a measuring unit. And we just learned to deal with it in our own lives the same way we deal with flour and money.
Flour and money. I love it. I love it. We're putting time in the same bucket. I'd love to dig into these three P's if you're open to it, the prioritize, planning, and protecting, because I think that there's some goodness in each of those. Can you kind of walk us through either like how do we look at it? How do we form habits with it? Like what are kind of your guidance points with each of those?
Sure, to try to keep it as simple as possible. The first P is prioritize. So, what is actually important? Because sometimes we let other people decide what's important. Sometimes we don't take the time to understand what's important. So, this is in work and it's life. What actually matters? And there's a million tools that I could give to people to dial this in. But simple things are like, what are your goals? What is your job description? Do you have performance metrics? I love the Eisenhower urgency matrix. Those are all useful tools to help people just dial into like what actually matters. Because at the beginning of the day, it is stupid to optimize something we shouldn't even be doing. So we've got to start with knowing what deserves our finite, precious time and begin with that. Then once we know what deserves our finite, precious time, then the next step is plan. Now that is simply allocating that unit of time, that measuring unit of time, into a way that is a proactive expectation of how we might spend it. And so this is something that has a lot of depth, but the most critical thing that really changed my life once I sort of got my mind around it was the habit of making a plan every Friday. So I created this weekly planning sheet when I felt like none of the other tools worked. I made my own. And every Friday I filled out this piece of paper and I plotted my time. I took the measuring unit. It was essentially a budget for my time. And I started with what I knew was going to happen, reality, what time have I already given away? What meetings am I supposed to be in? What appointments do I have? What are the actual facts that I already know? And I put that out on my week first. And then I saw some white space. And then again, to live in the world of reality, okay, that's my remaining time. That's what I actually then have to do everything else. So then I would plot what I hope to get done. What tasks, dinner with friends, yoga class, call my grandma, whatever, plot that out. And then the third piece, because we live in a hybrid and digital world, was what I call digital reinforcement. Now, what on this plan needs a text confirmation or an email, like a calendar invite? Do I need to send an agenda in advance? And then so that act of doing that every week, that what I know, what I hope, digital reinforcement, which are the steps for weekly planning. I did that every Friday, and that really changed my life to one that was much more proactive. And I was accomplishing everything that I said was a priority. And then that last P, protect. I made that plan and people are like, I love the idea of a plan, but someone's gonna try to change that. Someone's gonna come in and ask me to do something when I've scheduled time to do my writing or whatever. Um, and that's when I learned you kind of have to say no sometimes because it's a trade-off. If I say yes to this meeting, then I'm saying no to this traction work. If I say yes to this baby shower, then I'm saying no to watching a movie with my husband. Like so it's kind of realizing then that last piece is what of your plan is worth protecting, and also what of those things are essential to be able to protect yourself. We're an asset. We're an asset to your family, to your community, to your company. If you burn out because you're not managing your time well, you become a liability. And that was a huge thing that I had to learn in this journey. So again, those P's, know what's important with tools, the tools that I referenced. Make a plan every week with 3 simple steps. I recommend it on Friday, helps you go into your weekend restful, and then really figure out what is worth saying no to, and maybe even pre-think some ways that you can say no, so that you can proactively maintain that plan.
I love how simple this is. You don't have a lot of bells and whistles.
Mhm.
you
No.
you don't have a lot of fireworks. It's not a big
Uh-uh.
display show. It's literally just being real with yourself. I mean, honestly, that's everything that I'm hearing from you is like, let's just be real about it and let's make a plan about it. There's no fluff in
Mm-hmm.
this. And I think that's one of the things we get caught up in is tools and resources and how to do this and how to do that. And it gets so complicated that what do we naturally do? None of it.
Oh, I shut down. I get overwhelmed. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it's so simple. So I do a word of the year every year. And the word after my surgery was simplify.
Mm.
And I used this system for 2 years before I ever turned it into a business because I honestly only created it for myself. I was like, I got to get it together. Like, I was like, I don't want to have a terrible life anymore. Like, and so this is all experiential. As I referenced, there's not like a degree you can get in time management. So, like, this is all stuff that I just like, read everything on the internet. I read all the books. I listened to all the podcasts. I tried all the apps. I tried all the planners, and I distilled it all, which is not me looking for credibility. It's me just saying, like, I'm telling you, it is that simple. Everything else is distraction. Everything else to me was overwhelm. And when we're already feeling frazzled and overwhelmed with our time, having a tool or a process that's overly complicated, for me, I couldn't. It was just like, I'm just gonna lay on the floor and cry. So
Yep.
for me, the simplicity is the key. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah, it's sustainable. You can actually build a habit with it. It's enjoyable. And I think something that's
Mhm.
so important is we have to find what works for us individually. You mentioned that spectrum earlier. Like
Mhm.
obviously some of those planners with the water checkoffs and the 10 lists of this and all that, that works for some
Hmm.
people. But if you go into that or you open it and you're like, I immediately feel tightness in my chest. Okay, clearly that's not the right tool for you. Right. So I think it's so much of this is being honest and
Yeah.
exploring, okay, what do I need? Where do I consistently feel that bottleneck? And what do I need in that moment? And being just really radically honest with yourself about what is what is the lack of time management causing? Like if we look at the ripple effect
Hmm.
of the consequences and what it's causing, like, you're behind on things, you always feel like you're chasing your ass, like things stack up,
Hmm.
it doesn't feel good. And we just have to look at that honestly.
And a note of encouragement too for those people who are like, I want to be the person who checks off how many cups of water I've had. Well, great. You can move up the spectrum. You
Yeah.
can move from a place of like, start with just the basics. Like, what's the single most important thing you have to do today? Start with where you are and know that you can build habits that you can develop more off of. In the beginning, I was so simple. I had to be so simple because I couldn't handle anything more. But what happened from that simple act of planning every Friday? I changed my entire life from that. I I paid down debt. I actually lived in my house. I unpacked boxes. I went on vacations and saw my family. I ran marathons. I built a business. I changed my life dramatically with simply making a plan every Friday. And then I built other habits on top of that. Then I got into more complexity when I had the mental ability to do so. But I had to start somewhere. And really, it was just, okay, for the next 7 days, what on earth is going on in my life? And what I loved about that weekly planning process, what it did for me is it gave me an anchor. Every week, we've talked in the past about like being grounded. Every Friday, I got to be grounded. I got to take a minute. I got to get my arms around the chaos and I got to say, okay, life is heavy sometimes for the next 7 days. Just let me chunk it down just for 7 days. What do I actually have to deal with for the next 7 days? And if it's not in those 7 days, guess what, girlfriend? You don't have to think about it. And that helped me. It gave me like these bite-sized chunks of traction. And then at the end of the week, I'd look at my sheet and see all the things I crossed off. And I was like, yay, you're making it. You're doing okay. Adulting is for you. And then I would tackle the next 7 days. And it was just that simplification of starting where I could gave me the ability to then become a more, I guess, a more deep person, a more capable person, a better version of me. But if I had led with that, like I couldn't lead with that level. I had to do just the bare minimum.
Yeah. Now I love that reminder and that call out because you have to start where you are. And the more you do this, the better you feel. The more you want to
Hmm.
do it because the better you feel. And like you said,
Totally.
it just opens up capacity where, when you're not carrying around 100 pounds of mental weight on your shoulders, you have more clarity. You're a little bit more agile. You can see things differently and you want to apply the stuff to other areas of your life. So it done is better than perfect. You can
Hmm.
start with one thing, like one thing that I've implemented. Dinner is always a thing in our house. I'm like,
Hmm.
every day we got to make dinner. Like it's not
Yep.
it's not my favorite time of day. I'll just say it. But I look at my week ahead, much like you started with, and I'm like, next week is a dense week. I'm either teaching a class every night next week, or I've got two things of this, or I've got full days, or whatever the case is. Okay, we need to make sure that we proactively plan out our dinner week so that I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
every day trying to come up with something, or my husband's not trying to come up with something in the 11th hour. And just that simple shift, even though I still don't love planning dinner, it makes the entire week so much easier. It takes that
Yeah.
stress,
Because
it takes the stress off of it. We have food to eat, my body is nourished, you know what I mean? Like it
yeah, and you
just
just got real with yourself.
yeah.
Like it really is just getting real with yourself, Beth.
Yes.
Like, and I similarly, I love food and I like cooking, but I don't like having to cook when I don't feel like cooking. And I hate having to prepare
Yes.
food when I don't feel like preparing food. So I'll tell you what I got into was some of the meal deliveries. So like I'll do not the ones where like they send you the ingredients and then you cook them because I'm like, I'm still cooking. I'm just
Yeah.
spending more money on my groceries. So like I found a meal delivery now where I have 8 meals that come to me every week and all I have to do is like peel the top off and eat it or put it in the microwave for 2 minutes. And just that simple shift of being like, you know what, Samantha? this may be something that past you would have thought you didn't have the budget for or that it wasn't for you. But shifting to say, you know, let's be real, you don't want to cook this many meals a week. So let's give it a try. And then I realized that simple mental release of not having to worry about eight meals a week. I don't have to, between me and my husband, I don't have to think about. So I know at least 8 times we're going to eat and I'm done thinking about it. That one decision it saved me a million decisions. And this is a concept that I've read about in many different time management books is this concept of like, what is one decision you can make to save you 1,000 decisions? And that's
Mm.
so much of that weekly planning is you make the decision on Friday and then you just follow your plan. And you don't have to stop and think because I've done so much research too on like our brains, like psychology, neurology, the way we function. And we open thought loops and it becomes mental drag. It's like having apps open in the background on your phone. And that's what a lot of us are doing to our brains. So something as simple as taking time every week to write out a plan, we're essentially taking the thoughts out of our brain and we're putting them on paper so our brain can rest a little bit more. And I think that, if nothing else, is a huge part of how the productivity increases because we then have the ability to focus on the task at hand instead of being bogged down by all the background thoughts. As silly as that sounds, like if I didn't know that I have a dinner, I already know what dinner is going to be tonight. So I can move through this whole day focused on this conversation with you, the next task on my list, like everything I can be present because I've freed myself up to do that. And what that does is by being fully present in a task, now my productivity on it is through the roof. And it's something that's just, it's a wild concept to me that I'm like, it is so simple.
Yes.
It's not all these things. We don't have to time hack. We just have to do a little bit of rearranging in our brains and then a little bit of rearranging in our habits.
So good. Oh, what is one decision that's going to save me 1,000 decisions?
Yeah.
Gosh,
I love that.
that's life changing in its own. I mean, truly.
Mhm.
I think just giving
Yeah.
yourself permission to go there and admit that, like that,
Yeah.
man, that's awesome.
And I am just so you know, I'm holding myself back on all the things like I talk about with time management. Like I think about 50 other things that we could gift your listeners with that would change their lives, but I also am acutely aware of the passage of time. And so I know we are starting to like run out of this resource. But it's just there's so much. It's wild. It's wild. And what's crazy to me too is that people are like, anytime I tell people what I do, oh, I run a time management business, I get one of two responses. Oh, I need that. Or, oh, my so and so needs that. No one is ever like, that's dumb. No one ever is like, do you even make money? Like people are always like, oh, I need that. Like, and the lack of need, like there's always someone who needs help. And to me, that's wild. That it's such a I never as a little girl was like, I'm going to grow up and run a time management business. And I sometimes laugh that this is the area that I have an absurd depth of knowledge. I'm like, it's almost silly. Like, but it's also equally, oh my gosh, why don't more people do this? Because we need it.
Right. Well, to your point earlier, we're not taught it. It's not a skill that's, ingrained in us unless we grow up in an atmosphere that has it already in place. It's just not the
Mhm.
norm. So we're figuring it out as we go, as we are with many things. I know that there's so many things you could give us, but if there's just one more piece today that you're like, gosh, I just really want the listener to know this today about time management, what would that be?
Oh my gosh, that's the hardest question you've asked. Um, that it's something that it's not beyond you. It's not for you. Um, you can manage your time differently. If you are happy with how you're managing your time, awesome. Keep it up. Tell a friend. If you are struggling with how you're managing your time, don't get discouraged. You can do it. I wish I could emphasize to you the dumpster fire of a human that I was before I figured this out. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. And I really, really want to encourage someone right now. Like if you resonated with any part of this conversation, you know, perhaps this was gifted to you. This conversation was meant for you because this is us inviting you in to say, hey, guess what? You can manage your time differently. And it's not that hard. And we're going to help you get started. And you can do it. And then you will see your life transform. And then hopefully you'll turn around and you'll transform the people next to you because that's really what it takes. It's, I can manage my time better, but if four people around me are struggling, then we're still in this cultural issue. So for me, my goal is a cultural change. So I really want more and more people to find the peace that comes with managing time differently, because I truly believe it is how we're going to change our culture. And so you can do it. There's resources out there. We're going to help you. So like that, I guess that's the most important thing, is like it's accessible to you. It's not it's not beyond you. You can do
Yes.
it.
Yes, I love that. So good. And speaking of, you've got some great tools. You've got some great resources that if somebody wants to dig into this a little bit further. So tell us where can we find and connect with you? Where can we learn about your products? I know you've got a great offer for the listeners.
Yeah, so there's trainings, there's tools. The most basic place to start is if you go to freeweeklysheet.com, you can get a free weekly planning sheet and go ahead and get started. You can also get that at presentandproductive.com, thesamanthalaine.com, origamiday.com. I try to put it out everywhere. More importantly though, you can go to origamiday.com and use the code GUTSY to get 20% off any of my planning tools. So you can go ahead and get that weekly planning sheet for free and get started. If you're ready to get the full planning system or do the e-course, you can use that code GUTSY and get a little thank you treat for sharing your time with me, because I know it's valuable.
That's
So I want to
amazing.
give back. But yeah,
So good. We are going to link that in the show notes. Samantha has gorgeous, beautiful, very accessible products. So please check those out. And I got to know, what does gutsy mean to you, my friend?
GUTSY, I love that word. I really do, because I think, especially for women, we are such magnificent creatures. And I think when women own gutsiness and we realize that we are strong, I think that's when everything changes. And so to me, gutsy is just a reminder. And to me, I interpret it as this call to be bold, to be chest up, shoulders back, head high, charging into the male dominated world, understanding that we are capable, that we are strong and we are bold, while also having the ability to be soft and intentional and intellectual. And so I am always going to be a cheerleader of women, because I have this like, sorry men, I have this bias that we are just such phenomenal creatures who can truly accomplish anything. So to me, gutsy is just owning that and being bold and realizing that like we can do anything.
I love the reframe that Samantha gave us around how we look at time. And it's much like anything else. To make a change, we have to make a change. You could have tried a million things leading up to today, but this method might be the one that actually sticks. I've linked Samantha's planning tools down below. She's graciously given us 20% off of her products, so make sure you go check those out. I'd love to hear what stuck out to you today. What are you going to shift in your time management process? Come find me on social. My handle is @thatLauraAura. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.